Hey everybody, you're listening to the Game Boys!
Game Boys!
With Digibro and Hippo Crit.
Yeah.
Gonna be talking about one of my favorite video game consoles of all time on this episode. I hope you're excited.
I am excited, because it's also one of my favorites.
We're talking about the Game Boy Advance, people. The handheld Nintendo console that came out in 2001. And probably the console I've beaten like the most games on out of anything. I don't know about you.
Well, looking back at the library, looking back at the library I had, surprisingly, all of them are good. Like I mean, like there's a couple of games my brothers had, which were like, why did you buy that? But there's just so much good stuff on the Game Boy Advance. It's kind of ridiculous when you think about it. When you think about it in comparison to other handhelds. Yeah.
Not just that there's a ton of good stuff, but like a lot of first-party games on this console handheld. Like, there's a ton of Nintendo games, new IPs that came into being on this console that were popular, like really beloved, and have kind of died in the time since. I feel like this was kind of a landmark moment of even the launch titles. This console launched with a bunch of fucking great games. And it consistently had them throughout its run. I think it's probably one of the most solid console lifespans that's ever existed.
Yeah, I don't know what it launched with, but I have a feeling it was given so much like love and attention because of the success of the Game Boy. Because like everyone had that, and they were like, okay, so people love handhelds. Let's push a lot of that. So that it was a good idea. It should have kept doing that. I mean, they kind of did. With the DS.
The DS was a big deal, too. The 3DS is the first Nintendo handheld that's kind of, like, stumbled out the gate. But so what's your history with Game Boys? Did you ever have, like, a Game Boy or a Game Boy Color before the GBA?
No, my first exposure to Game Boys was the Game Boy Color. Or, no, just the original Game Boy, or whatever Pokemon Blue was on. It was just in a box.
It was on both.
It was on both? I think I remember it having no color.
I think because, I mean, if you played it on the Game Boy, then it had no color. But it was like the first. I want to say it was the first color game, like the first Game Boy Color games for the Pokemon ones.
It may have been color then, but that was just in a box at a kids club sort of after school thing, and there was only one. It was just that console with Pokemon Blue. And I would go there and play it for a little bit, and every time I would go back, somebody had played it and saved over the save file, so I could never play Pokemon. So every time I would go there, I would rush to box to see if somebody had I would grab it first and try and go a little further, but I knew eventually it would just be all for naught. So I asked for a Game Boy and Pokemon Blue for my birthday, and my parents got me a Game Boy Advance SP and Pokemon Sapphire. Which is, it's just
the next step up.
Yeah, I at the first moment I saw it, I was like, well, that's not what I wanted, but it's probably great, and it was. I love it so much.
In fact, it's dramatically better in terms of like being modern and what was actually of the time.
Yeah,
I think it's really funny that you didn't know that there was like a more advanced version out there.
I was so game news illiterate my whole childhood that just seeing that Game Boy, I think I knew that the Game Boy Advance was a thing. I had seen it at a friend's house, but I just had I just wanted Pokemon Blue because I had played it, and I didn't even think that there could be something better of the same
Which
type.
Is also playable on the GBA. Like,
yeah.
I'm willing to bet your parents went into the store and asked for a Game Boy and Pokemon Blue, and they got upsold.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is like the actual one your kid really wants. Like, your kid told you, like, you misheard your child. He actually wants this because this is what kids want, when the reality is no, you're just that uninformed.
Yeah. It's very good in hindsight because the SP, I grew up with the backlight and the folding screen. It's like I couldn't even imagine after I had the Game Boy SP, like seeing a Game Boy Advance, I couldn't even imagine playing with that.
I didn't even catch that you said SP. So we're talking like late into the GBA's life.
Yeah.
You didn't know it even existed. That's fucking hilarious. I had my first GBA was the original. It was a Snow White one. I got it in 2002 because I got it for my birthday. I totally didn't expect it because at the time my family was pretty broke, and like I didn't think they'd be able to kind of afford it. But it was only $100. Like handhelds weren't as expensive back then. It's like you look at the 3DS, it was like 200 something, right? Or was it 150? I don't remember. It was expensive when it came out, and this was not so much. So they bought me a Game Boy Advance and Golden Sun because at this time I had been a subscriber to Nintendo Power for years, and I was like way obsessed with Nintendo everything, and Golden Sun was like the best reviewed game on the console. I don't think I'd ever played an RPG before. Like, I think it was my first RPG, but it just so happened that my family was moving cross-country, like, 2 weeks after my birthday. And it took us 7 days to move, and I say cross-country, I mean up from Florida to Virginia. But because we had so many problems with our U-Hauls exploding on us, that it took 7 days to make that trip. And in that time, I played through all of Golden Sun, and it was like the most magical experience of my life. Have you ever played Golden Sun?
I've seen it in a magazine because I never got it, but I think it was like I had played all the GBA games I had gotten, and I was thinking, oh well, what else is there? Let's look up some stuff, or just look in this magazine for the top GBA games or something. And I saw Golden Sun, and I said, that doesn't look like what I already have played. I don't like it. I don't want to like it. But I've since learned that it is beloved by many people, so I should probably at some point.
It would be a good GRPJ.
Yes.
For sure. I think the thing about Golden Sun is it's very much, I think it's probably built to be like a baby's first RPG. Like, it's pretty easy and simple to learn. It's turn-based, it's like classic style, but and the story is very like just, fantasy plot kind of thing. Like it's got a little bit more to it than just like a generic fantasy world, but it's a dialogue heavy, long cutscene kind of, old school RPG. And I was way into it at the time. And like I remember the most important thing about the game is that it has these things called djinns, which are almost like a Pokemon. Like they're summons basically. Like your character will have certain djinns. That's DJINN, and like you would use special abilities with them. So like basically a lot of the combat was based around having cool djinns and using them for like summons and special attacks. But like again, the systems were not particularly complicated. So this was definitely a game that 10-year-old me, like I'm shit at RPGs now, and I was able to beat Golden Sun as a 10-year-old. So I know it's an easy ass game, but it's decently long. Probably took me 50 hours to beat it.
The first RPG I think I ever played was on the GBA, and I don't know whether you would actually call it an RPG, but it is kind of basically, it's Fire Emblem, which is not at all as like
not the same kind of RPG.
Not the same kind of RPG, and also ridiculously difficult. Like I can't believe, like it's the sort of game that save scumming was born from this. Like every time I made a mistake, you had to restart.
This is not counting Pokemon, by the way, which we both obviously was both
I keep forgetting that's an RPG. It just doesn't feel like it. It feels like a totally separate thing.
I mean, that's really baby's first RPG, but yeah, it feels different because it's I want there to be I think we talked about this, that in our RPG, like what is an RPG podcast, that like I want there to be a separate genre of like party member collection RPGs like Pokemon and Suikoden, where like there's hundreds of people to be in your party, because I think that deserves to be considered its own genre.
Yeah, at that point the RPG is really just stats. That's all it means.
Yeah. Stats
and towns.
But yeah, so Fire Emblem, tell me all about that game, because that's one of the most important GBA games we have to talk about, I think.
Yeah, that is... Alright, so I played a lot of games. I had some fun. with a lot of them, but Fire Emblem was by far the biggest time sink of all of them, including both Pokemons I played, Sapphire and Leaf Green. It's something about it, something that just really I just love so much. The strategy element of like all the maps and stuff makes it so that there's a lot of it's hard to just go into a big old review, a talk piece about Fire Emblem because there's so many things to say. But
starters, it's a turn-based strategy game.
Turn-based strategy game on a grid with every single. It's unique among like those sorts of games. Like Advance Wars is similar, but Fire Emblem has every character is a soldier. So every person that can be in your army is a character that can talk and has cutscenes and dialogue and you can love.
Which is what I expected those games to be like. 'Cause that's the first strategy game I played. So when I look at a game like, say, XCOM or Advance Wars, where it's more like moving units that aren't personal, it felt really weird to me. 'Cause in Fire Emblem, the whole point is that it's like the story revolves around these characters who you're fighting with. Like,
and the whole reason you want them to not die is because you like them, and you know.
Yeah.
But so like I played this DS port or re-release of Fire Emblem 1 or something, and it has Marth going around with a bunch of no personality, just faceless people with not really any, they have portraits, but that was what Fire Emblem used to be like. You just got a bunch of axemen in your party, and you just move them around.
Explains why no one likes that, because like that Shadow Dragon game, I was always like really shocked that people didn't talk about it more in Fire Emblem conversations, and I guess that's why. Is that it's so different from what the series became that nobody cares about it.
So that was weird. But yeah, Fire Emblem 7, very story driven. I think it's one of those times in my life where it's like, to me, what Sonic Adventure was to you. Like it was the first big, scary, epic story I've ever really experienced. And it sort of blew my mind at every single thing. But now that I look at it again, it's not quite as epic as I remember it being. But it's still pretty good.
I mean, all the cutscenes are just dialogue back and forth between characters.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that, because even though I was probably older than you when I played the game, I paid no attention to the cutscenes. Like, I remember reading the first few and just finding it, because I hated reading as a kid. So I would just burn through those. I'd just mash A until they were over and get back to the combat. So I knew nothing about the plot. It's
something weird about like being a kid and holding the game right up to your face that sort of, you can do it at any time. There's no stress of like somebody turning off the console saying it's time for dinner. You just put it on the table and leave it for a bit. It's something like I felt like I could take my time with Fire Emblem. So every single text box I read it all the way, and sometimes I just read it for a long time for some reason. And then even when I restarted the game, like I used to like enjoy restarting games just to get a bit more. Like, oh yeah, I remember this, like 2 weeks ago, wow. And I just, I would read it all again. I don't know, maybe I just like reading, but not so much anymore, I guess.
How good were you at Fire Emblem? Like, how... did you beat the game as a kid?
I did beat the game as a kid. I didn't beat Hector's thing, which is basically like super hard mode. Which is like after you beat Lynn's story, which is like the first 10 chapters, which is like the tutorial kind of. Then there's Eliwood's story, which is the main meat of the game, which is like another 20 chapters with lots of side quests and stuff. And then there's Hector's one, which is Eliwood's story, but from Hector's point of view, which is a lot harder. I never beat that. But there were times when I would print out cheat codes, well, not cheat codes, but like hints and tips and... for Fire Emblem, I would obsess over character stats and random number generation glitch exploits. This is like the only game that I ever really went to GameFAQs for as a kid. And I actually tried, just remembering this, like building a website, detailing all of the Fire Emblem information. I tried to learn how to build a website to put all of that on, not knowing that GameFAQs existed with all the information. I was just, I didn't know anything. I just wanted to write down in books like all the stats that were on every page of every character. God, I guess I was pretty good because I spent so much time with it.
I could not beat chapter 15X. That was how far I got. Like, I remember as a kid, because I loved the game, and the reason I'd bought it is obviously just because Marth and Roy were in Smash. So, like, it was this moment, like, I had known what they were from. I knew they were from Fire Emblem, but, like, none of them had ever been released here. So when that game came out, to me it was like, oh my god! They finally did it! They brought the Marth and Roy game to America, then you buy it and there's no Marth and Roy in the game, and you're like, wait, what the fuck? It's
kind of the opposite for me, because, like, as you know, I love Fire Emblem, and then I saw, oh, there's Fire Emblem guys in Smash? Sweet! It's you know, the son of Eliwood. Oh, that's not the right guy. Who the fuck is Marth? And then they would continue to release games after, you know, the one I liked, the two I liked, and go straight to Ike, and then the newer ones. I'm like, why did you skip over the best games in the whole fucking series?
Yeah, that is weird. It's really weird that they never put, like, Eliwood. I don't know, maybe because those other ones are more popular in Japan or something, but, like, the ones we had, like, it feels like they should have been in Smash. But, again, if they weren't as popular in Japan, then who knows?
Hector doesn't even have a sword. It would have been perfect.
Yeah, finally a no sword boy. But yeah, that's fascinating to me because I would have been playing Smash for like a good 4 years by then. Like I played the first one on the N64, and then Melee, which came out in 2001. So I mean, obviously Fire Emblem characters weren't in the first game, but like, you know, I was very familiar with Smash, and so like that's why I was so excited when Fire Emblem came out, and I was pretty into it, but I remember taking like 30 tries to beat Chapter 14, which is the one with like the really big map.
With all the horses.
You have to go like right to left across a big map, and there's like the
and
sea people come up from the bottom.
I remember every map like exactly what happens.
Yeah,
and
I spent so long on that, and then 15, I think it was 15X, where like you're supposed to get, there's like a character you're supposed to get there, and the way I was playing was I wanted to get all the characters because I saw that as like the important thing to do. So I was doing the side missions and shit, trying to get all the characters. When in retrospect, I don't know if that would have helped or not because I'm just basically not good at the game. I'm
trying to remember. 15X, is that like inside a castle and there's Raven and Lucius are like
No, it's
talking?
in a town. It's in a town. Like,
I'm just gonna look that up.
Yeah, it's really hard, and I couldn't beat it, and I gave up. But then there was the next Fire Emblem game that came out on the GBA, The Sacred Stones, which was really interesting because in this one you could grind. And so that's immediately what I did, was grind my Axe Boy up to maximum level. But even then, I couldn't beat level 16 in that game, because even with my max level Axe Boy, I'm shit at tactics, and like, I think I had like a really unbalanced team, because like I'd spent so much time leveling one guy, I hadn't leveled anybody else, and turns out that didn't work out well, you know?
Yeah, I think
I've never actually beaten a Fire Emblem.
Playing Fire Emblem properly, like, I remember, you didn't get to this part, but there's like an arena in Fire Emblem, and in the arena, you can put your characters in, and there's like, you bet money, and the more money you bet, the more big the reward you get from it. But it's also a more dangerous opponent compared to whoever you sent in. And you can send your guy in, and after you attack and they attack, you can press B to cancel it if you're afraid they're gonna die, because if they die, that's it. You lost your guy, and, you know, the game continues. But, that's like a strategy, because that's like the only way in Fire Emblem 7 to grind characters without killing the enemy in the map. So you would do that over and over, getting a little bit of money every time, and, you know, gambling your guy's life, because sometimes the enemy, they have like 1% to critical hit chance, and if they get that on their first try, there's not even a chance to exit out unless you do it immediately. And it's like, it's really stressful. But I would do that. I would do those maps. And one time, I think I got like 4 or 5 guys to level 40, which is like level 20, upgrade them, and then level 20 again, which took forever and is kind of ridiculous, but I think playing the game like that, like taking chances and doing maps over and over again, getting like the perfect strategy and understanding, you know, all the different ways to lure enemies or lure specific spawns of enemies into the right place so you can kill them. It prepared me for like anything. Like I can play any Fire Emblem and it's nothing. It's just I'm good at strategy in that specific type of game.
So on the subject of strategy games, did you ever end up playing Advance Wars?
I had a DS Advance Wars game, I think.
Because the original, that was one of, I think, the launch titles for the GBA, or at least an early one. Because I remember, like, all the games that were, like, highly rated when the console came out, and Advance Wars was one of them. So I bought that pretty much just because I was, like, big Nintendo Kool-Aid drinker at the time. And I fucking blew ass at Advance Wars. I had both of them. I had 1 and 2 on the GBA, and I could not get more than like an hour into the game because it was too fucking hard. So yeah, I don't have much to say about Advance Wars other than I couldn't do it. But I've opened up, the whole time we've been talking about Fire Emblem, I've just been opening every GBA game I ever played, which is quite a lot.
I don't know whether I've told this story on this show or other shows, but I have with me my little blue safe, which I think I must have told this story somewhere, maybe on a PCP. My little blue safe that I would use to hide my GBA games away from my brothers, which has a little combination. And I'm looking at all the games I have right now in front of me, and it's weird because this is the only console I had that used cartridges. And I really appreciate the little plasticky feel of a cartridge that is not like a tiny SD card. It's just, you can hold it in your hand and it feels like a real thing.
They were great.
And you can stack them on top of each other and they make a little like plastic clack noise.
Yeah. For a long time, the way I had my GBA games displayed was like in rows that were standing up, sometimes on top of each other. Because they're weirdly easy to stand up. They don't just immediately fall, which is surprising. But yeah, it's probably the only, like, GBA and Game Boy are the only console where you don't have to keep the box. I don't have any boxes for GBA games. Like, they would come in a little piece of like cardboard and I just throw that away.
I have all of the boxes. I kept all of them for some reason. I don't know. I never did. They really appeal to me because they're like about the same size as the GBA and they're very colorful and shiny. They're probably going to be like collector's items eventually. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think you could probably sell it for more if you have the box. Like, N64 games are the same way. No one has the boxes for them, you know? Or, really, I guess the first few Nintendo consoles. All the cartridge consoles. People just have the cartridges. Because, again, they came in, like, shitty little pieces of cardboard. Whereas now every game's in, like, a proper plastic case, you know?
Yeah.
But, yeah, so there's one more tactics game that I played extensively on the GBA, which is Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. Sequel to Final Fantasy Tactics on the PS1. Spiritual sequel, at least. Takes place in the same universe. You ever play Tactics Advance?
I don't think so. I think I may have like played a ROM of it like for 5 minutes because I heard about it, but I didn't know what was going on. I think it was a snowball fight or something.
Yeah, it starts off with a snowball fight.
Yeah.
Between a bunch of kids. So, Tactics for the PS1, which I didn't even find out about till later, and I've never really played it, is like renowned for having one of the best stories in video games or something. I know Best Guy Ever is a huge fan of it. I've only played Tactics Advance, which is an interesting game because there's just like it's another turn-based strategy game on a grid, but the maps are much smaller, and it's more about doing like a shitload of them. Like, basically each map is just like a small challenge, and there's like a quest system where you can pick up like different random tactics quests at like a pub and do them like in whatever order you feel like, essentially. You know, like whatever's within your level, and then there's other quests you do to sort of advance the story. And there was lots of like character building and like different races that you could get through different circumstances. I remember I had the strategy guide for this game, and I would spend a lot of time just like trying to figure out how the mechanics worked. But I probably only played 5 to 10 hours of the game in total. I never got far in it, so I couldn't tell you like what it's actually about. But I remember it being dope. I'd like to try it again if I ever get in the mood for a tactics game.
Yeah, I feel like I should give that a go. Or the PS1 one. They seem like they'd be up my alley. It was just weird that the grid was like isometric and like
that was my least favorite thing about it. Is
it just doesn't look very nice. At least the GBA one. I was like,
it's just awkward because you press up and that means upright.
What does it mean?
Yeah, it's like how do I fucking figure out which button goes in which direction? You know. That's why I hate isometric games in general. But I also had Golden Sun 2, which I played for not very long because I think it takes place. I don't remember if it's like I think it's like way in the future of the other game or something like that, or maybe not. No, never mind. It's like a direct sequel. I'm reading on Wikipedia. But I just remember not being into it. Like, for whatever reason, something about it felt wrong. Like, it didn't feel like what I wanted the next Golden Sun game to be or something like that. And maybe it was just that the first game had ended on such epic terms that to go back to the beginning and be like a nobody again was just like not satisfying. I'm really not sure. But I remember not getting very far in it.
What else? What other types of game? I guess we could talk about Metroid. Metroid Zero Mission. The best one. Well, there's Metroid Zero Mission and Fusion, which are, I mean, personally my favorites, but I haven't played Super Metroid yet, so I guess I don't really know whether I can say that. I don't know whether I'm going to be lynched.
Super Metroid's the greatest game ever made, so you should definitely play it. But
okay.
The thing about... my first exposure to Metroid was obviously I knew Samus from Smash, and Metroid Fusion and Metroid Prime came out at like the exact same time, and I got both of them. So it was really interesting because from my perspective, like when people talk about Metroid Prime, they always talk about how crazy it is. Like, oh, Metroid was suddenly in first person, and from my perspective, it was both at the same time. Like, it was always both in first person and 2D, because that's just the first ones I played. I loved Metroid Fusion at the time. I definitely beat it, like, at least twice as a kid, and thought it was fucking awesome.
Yeah, that's, like, one of the scariest games, atmospherically, and, like, with a little bit of a cutscene here and there. And I remember being terrified of like the SAX and the X parasites more so than I was playing Metroid Zero Mission fighting the Metroids. Like that was nothing compared to the X guys who would just permeate the entire thing, and they would. I think the really scary thing about it was that the levels could change while you were doing something else, and then you would come back and it would be like, oh no, it's different. But it's just the same, but it's scary and different, and there could be a beast at any moment coming to kill me.
There's a lot of there's definitely parts in the game that I had to look up strategy guides for as a kid, like where I just straight up could not figure out where to go or what to do, and I had to look it up. There's tons of bosses in that game too. Like, the bosses are kind of cool. There's lots of like big screen filling, beautifully animated.
Do you remember the gravity guy who like sucked you in, or something? Like, it was a big like weird robot-y black mass, and he filled the whole screen. And he if you killed him, you get the gravity suit, which made you be able to run through water, I think. But he was like the scariest guy because I could never beat him for like months.
Jesus. Well, Metroid Fusion, though, funnily enough, while I loved this game as a kid, I went back to it. I had like a whole Metroid-a-thon a couple years ago where I played through first Zero Mission, which is fucking awesome. Zero Mission has like some of the coolest like graphical details in a game, because like Metroid Fusion's neat because it's on like a space station and there's like this idea that like the Metroids are getting out and all that, but what I don't like about Fusion is that you can easily tell where you are at all times. Like, you have a very strong sense of, like, okay, here's the thing, there's 6 places, you go to each of those, you come back to the hub, and it's kind of safe.
Yeah.
Whereas the other Metroid games are more about, like, totally getting isolated and lost on, like, this weird alien planet.
It's a different style, but I do like the idea of, like, the hub thing, because sometimes the hub isn't safe, and that's when you really like you shit your
That's
pants.
True.
But
that's true. When it shuts down, it gets really scary.
Thinking about like looking stuff up, I actually managed to brute force my way through Fusion, but Zero Mission, I got stuck a lot. Like it's very confusing, especially since like you get a power. This isn't like a bad thing. It's just like, you know, you get a power and it shows you where you go next vaguely, and I always forget what it was pointing to or how to get there or how to like imagine how to get there. I would just run around in circles for hours because it was a bit less direction-y. But you know, as I grew up, that didn't become that was less of a problem as I understood like how to think about stuff.
I remember being disappointed with Zero Mission the first time I played it as a kid, only because it was so short. Because Fusion was like much longer. At least it seemed that way. Because you can beat Metroid Zero Mission in like 4 hours. Like, I want to say the first time I played it, I beat it in the span of 2 days. Like, I just burned through the entire game and then was done. Whereas Fusion's probably closer to 10 hours. But
that's probably me running around in circles thinking that Zero Mission is way longer. Because I've always felt like there's a lot of backtracking. But maybe that's just me, just running in the wrong direction.
But I mean, because Zero Mission is a direct port of the original Metroid game, so it's only about as long as the original. Have you ever tried to play the original Metroid?
I have on the GBA version. Like if you beat it, you get the little special. And I tried playing it, but there's no save point. I don't think. Or maybe there is.
It's just impossible when you're used to modern Metroid, because your shots don't go all the way across the screen, and like the running speed's just weird, and like and it doesn't, while it still has, like, I can appreciate how at the time people might have felt like they were lost in an alien world on that game, but the graphics are just so dated compared to you know, like the other games. And it's like, to me, Zero Mission has assured me that I will never play Metroid 1 again.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like, there's no point when it's so much better.
I probably would try to play it if, like, I was playing it on an NES with the NES controller, because that would be like, oh, it's a blast from the past sort of thing. But on my GBA or on an emulator, I don't really care. It's just, I mean, the thing I hated was that you couldn't run and shoot downwards in front of you, which was really important. Otherwise, you have to stop and then crouch. And then sometimes it just ruins everything, and you jump like you're in water the whole time.
I have to wonder if there's people who feel like the opposite, though, because it's like 20 years between the original and the remake, and the same is true of the new. They just remade Metroid 2 as Samus Returns, and I've bought it and I've started playing it, and I don't know if I like it as much as Metroid 2. So,
wait, Samus Return, that was just on Game Boy, wasn't it? So they've remade that. Okay, version. That's interesting. I didn't know it was a remake of that one.
Yeah, it's a straight remake of it, but much more has been done to it than was done to Zero Mission, I would say. Like, they've changed kind of the basic mechanics of Metroid in some ways. But, yeah, so when I was replaying through these games, you know, Zero Mission was fucking awesome. I really enjoyed 2 for its atmosphere. Super Metroid's like the greatest game of all time. And then you get to Metroid Fusion, and it's very different because it is so much more, like, explains a lot more to you. There's more plot focus, more cutscenes. It tells you exactly where to go, usually. And also just the GBA games actually have like better controls than the than Super Metroid, I think, because they use the L and R buttons to great effect. But I don't know, it felt weird going back to Fusion. Like, I didn't like it as much as the other Metroids once I'd played the other Metroids, but you know, still a great game that was really important to me as a kid.
You cut out for a little bit. Were you saying you went to Super Metroid and that was better?
Yeah, well, I mean, Super Metroid's perfect, so everyone should play that game. It's great.
I probably will play, but give me a pitch, if you haven't already, while I was disconnected for a second there.
It's Super Metroid is it's just a much more full and fulfilling version of the other. Like, to me, the Metroid games always felt like most of them are like 5 hours long, and like there's a lot of running around back and forth that you can do and shit like that, but ultimately it's over relatively quick. And Super Metroid's just a bigger, more fulfilled version of the game.
It's Zero Mission with the breadth and depth of Fusion.
I would say more so than Fusion, because Fusion's also pretty short. Super Metroid is fucking huge. It's like it's probably over 10 hours long, and there's more powers, there's more different ways to explore, there's more variety of environments and stuff. It just feels like a more complete game than the other Metroids, I would say. Which is why it becomes harder to return to the other ones once you've played Super Metroid, because it's like, well, why would I play the other ones when I've got this one? Which I think is why they didn't make another 2D Metroid for so long. Like, why there was such a huge gap between Super and Fusion, and then why there was not another one after Fusion was like... Because Fusion's pretty different, because it changes up the feel and it changes up the concept, where now she's like got this X-Fusion thing, and there's like different stuff in there. Whereas Super Metroid felt like it perfected the format of what Metroid had been. Anyway, we're going down a Metroid hole here.
I just want to say, so if I were to... Do you think it would be better for people to play Zero Mission, Fusion, and then Super Metroid so they don't ruin themselves for the other two?
Yeah. That's a fine way to do it. Though I will say that like the only problem with Super Metroid is that the controls will feel more dated just because there's no L and R button. And like they really did a lot with that on the GBA. But anyways,
all right.
Moving on from Metroid, another launch title that I owned at the time, and I know you're a big fan of games in the series, is Rayman Advance.
Oh yes, I haven't played the GBA version, but that fucking game came out on everything.
I think it's the same game, right? Is it just Rayman 1?
I believe so.
Because I didn't know
same
that.
Sort of graphics.
Yeah, they called it Rayman Advance, and I had always assumed it was like a GBA game original until literally just now when I clicked on it and it took me to Rayman the game, and I went, oh. But I thought maybe, because when I watched your footage of you playing Rayman, I went, this looks exactly like Rayman Advance. Did they just like remake it, or is it just that they use a lot of the same themes in every game or something?
I think, well, Rayman 1... they put on, like I say in the first part of that video series I did on it, it was like so many platforms it came out on, and they look basically the same in all of them.
Same goes for the newer ones, like Legends and all those are on like every imaginable platform.
I don't know what it is about Rayman, but it gets around.
Yeah,
I think there's a mobile game of Rayman that looks the same as Rayman Advance.
So I guess it's fair to say that you've played Rayman Advance since you've played Rayman.
Well, yeah,
I hated it.
I don't know.
I hate Rayman.
I can't speak for like the quality of the game itself or like how difficult it is.
It was very well reviewed when it came out, which is why I bought it, and I hate it. Like, I don't know what it is about Rayman. The controls don't work with my mind. Like, I just can't. I cannot stomach the way he moves and the way his hand moves. It just disgusts me. So I hate all of them, including the new ones. Another game...
New ones are great.
No, I can't stand them. I've played the demos and I hate it. Sonic Advance, which is not a port of a Sonic game, but it was sort of a throwback to the classic Sonic style. They made 3 of them, and they're all right. If you like classic Sonic, there's no reason not to play the Sonic Advance games. Biggest difference is they give you 4 playable characters as well.
Yeah, I grew up, well, I grew up, but had Sonic Advance 3 for a time. That was like I think the first Sonic game I played at all, but it was my brother's game, so I didn't play it that much. I think of this as like the good Sonic, like good 2D Sonic. For some reason, like I think you were playing that in like a Digi Bros thing
recently,
and you were talking about how people seem to like that more than the classics. I think there's something about I'm trying to remember what it was like to play, but because it was a while ago. But I remember it being difficult near the end, but generally you could just go fast the whole time. And
I felt, when I was replaying it for the show, I felt like it was basically the exact same as the classic games, just it was like good. Because the very first Sonic game is definitely a lot harder to go back to than Sonic 2. Like, I think when people say, oh, the classics weren't that good either, I always have to wonder if they just played Sonic 1 and assumed that they're all the same, because watching the Blue Glow videos on Sonic's 1 and 2, like 2 is a clear step up from 1, and 3 and Knuckles is a clear step up from 2. So like, I just think Sonic Advance is better than the original Sonic, but maybe not better than 2 or 3, you know?
Maybe. Since I played Sonic Mania recently, I was thinking about this. I should have played Sonic Advance just to get a feel for whether it's like a different version of the Sonic classicness, or whether it's, you know, just basically the same thing and I shouldn't have enjoyed it as a kid. It was a bad thing to like. But I did like playing as the different characters, I guess. Cream the Rabbit, you know? Who the fuck is that?
Yeah. So another game... I'm curious if you ever played this one, because it had a very unique gimmick. There were 2 of these, but it's Boktai, The Sun Is in Your Hand.
That sounds too Japanese for me.
So Boktai was a 2-series game where you had this gigantic cartridge because it had a solar panel in it. And the way you play this game, it's a stealth game, like, it's made by Hideo Kojima, or produced by him at least.
Oh, you've talked about this.
Yeah, and it's a stealth game where you stun people with like a gun that shoots out light bullets. But in order to use your gun, you have to recharge it via literal sunlight. And so the only way to play this game is to play it outside during the day. Now, where is the least possible place to play an original GBA? Outside in the sun, because the thing doesn't have a backlight and you can't fucking see your screen if you're out in the sun. Not to mention,
idea.
If you're a gamer, you probably don't spend a lot of time outside, you know? Like, I get the logic that Nintendo has with handhelds. I think Nintendo thinks, oh, people buy the handheld so they can play the game on the go or outside. No. We buy the handheld so we can play it on the couch. Yeah, and in bed, at home. So... that's, you know, I was one of those, and like, so I never bought Boktai at the time because I was like, you know, I'm never gonna be outside to use this mechanic. I didn't know it was a stealth game though, and I was always really curious about it. So eventually, as an adult, I bought it and tried to play it, and as soon as I realized it was not only a stealth game, but an isometric stealth game, with a weirdly complicated death system, I got sick of it in less than an hour, and I was like, no thanks, but it's generally fairly well regarded, and the gimmick is worth knowing about for sure.
Speaking of like lights and playing at night and stuff, I love the GBA so much, especially because of the sneakiness you could have with it, especially the SP, because it had a backlight, so you could play under the covers in bed. But also you could fold it away so that the backlight gone. You could fold it away, you could hide it under your pillow. Your parents would never know you're playing games all night. I think the first time I stayed up all night was because I was playing Fire Emblem. And it really blew my mind when my dad caught me, and I thought, shit, it's late. He's going to tell me off. And he said, oh, you're up early. Oh, what have I done?
Yeah.
It's so cool. I love that aspect of it. It's such a... I think, compared to the DS, because the DS is wider, and it's harder... Like, when you're lying on your side, your handheld console is going to be lying on one of your hands, pushing it into the bed.
I've never liked the DS or the 3DS specifically for that reason. The GBA was so perfectly sized, and the DS has always felt clunky to me.
So small and so light that it just doesn't push into you enough. For you, like, even with baby hands, it's just perfect. You can just lie there. Yeah. It doesn't even get uncomfortable after 20 hours.
When I got a SP, that shit came with me everywhere. And, the SP, because you were saying, how did you even use it before the backlight? The answer is you couldn't see shit, and you bought a fuckload of peripherals to try to help. Because they would sell, like, all these different things where it's, like, a light that, like, a little lamp that plugs into your charge port or whatever, like... Because there's that little USB slot or whatever on the top of the thing. So you'd plug in, like, either a little lamp or, like, they had expandable speakers. Some of them were... Fucking one of the contraptions I had for the original Game Boy was a, like, microscope like it's a lens that you would put over your game that made it like it look bigger, and
like a magnifying glass.
Yeah, a magnifying glass. That's the word I was looking for. It enhanced the size of the screen and also shined lights on it. It was a huge contraption.
I think the AVGN did a video of Game Boy peripherals, and he showed that.
Yeah,
I was like, that's so bulky. Yeah,
and but with the SP, that was like, oh, everything's cured. They've perfected it, you know. And the one I had was the one that looks like a classic NES. Like they designed it to be an NES model, and it was awesome. And I got it for a birthday, and I took it around everywhere. And then it got fucking stolen later on by some piece of shit. So yeah, I don't have it anymore, which is very sad because that thing still sells for like $100 because it's a special design, you know.
I feel like I should mention if that guy is in the comments, he's already typed this. The GBA SP is not backlit, it's sidelit. It's just got lights, very, very thin lights around the sides edges of the screen, just so that that guy who said, it's actually not backlit, we know, I know at least.
Yeah. Alright, there's still a shitload more games to get through. Did you ever play any of the Castlevania games on the GBA?
No. I was unfamiliar with Castlevania until the internet and YouTube.
I was as well. I never played any of them at the time, but like I heard a lot about them because there were 3, and this was because Castlevania Symphony of the Night had come out in the late 90s and the PS1 was a huge deal, and that's what started the Yugioh games. Where Metroidvania the term comes from is these Castlevania games that are more like Metroid because you have to navigate everything. Starting with Symphony of the Night, then there were 3 on the GBA, all of which are well regarded. Aria of Sorrow, Circle of the Moon, and Harmony of Dissonance. I've played most of Aria of Sorrow. I wasn't that into it. I did a review of it back in my adventure action RPG days.
I thought those were DS games. I guess I just played
No, there's 3 more on the DS.
Oh.
There's 3 more Yugioh games for the DS, and then after that was when Konami, you know, did what they do and fucked up the whole console series. Did you ever have any of the classic NES games on the GBA? Because that was another thing about the console was that this was the beginning of the end of Nintendo re-releasing everything forever. Because nowadays, it's Virtual Console, where you go in, and I complain about how I have to pay $4 for an NES game on the Virtual Console, but on the GBA, you would pay $20 for a cartridge that is just an NES game on the GBA.
Yeah. I didn't have any of those, but I did have arguably the only good one of those sorts of ports, which is the Donkey Kong Country and Donkey Kong Country 2. Because I didn't have an SNES, but
that would be the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, but
there's two different types. There was games that were remade for the Super Nintendo, which were just like the same title. It would be like there was Super Mario Advance, which was the Super Mario World games remade, and then there was the Donkey Kong Country games and a few others like that. But then there was also a series like literally called the Classic NES series, and they had these like generic looking like cartridges where they would re-release a bunch of classic NES games. I don't remember if I actually owned any of them, though. I don't think I did.
Yeah, I can imagine buying them just because it's cute to have a smaller cartridge of the cartridge you used to have. But I don't know what... I guess the idea is that, you take it on the go. When you're sitting on the toilet, you can play Mario. But it really was the beginning of the end. I didn't know they had NES games. I thought it was just like the occasional Super Nintendo game which was graphically comparable would be ported over, like Donkey Kong.
And it made sense for that, because it's like the GBA was as strong as a Super Nintendo. So like, hey, you can have a Super Nintendo, but now it's on the go. Cool, you know? But it gradually got worse as we started having, like, now you're paying for an NES game on your fucking Wii U, and it still costs this much money, you know?
Yeah.
Just give it to me for free, for fuck's sake. Final Fantasy 1 and 2 was one of the games I played a shitload of on
Yeah.
Yeah, this was not a classic NES series. It was a full remake, a graphical overhaul, and they made it a lot easier and more simple, and just like playable for new generations. Did you ever have it at all?
I never had it, but I played a ROM of it, and that was the first time I played Final Fantasy. I thought that was really nice.
I was totally into it because, I mean, granted, I was into Final Fantasy 1, because 2 sucks.
Yeah, I couldn't get into 2. The beginning cutscenes were like, who cares? I don't understand.
No one likes 2. And it's also just graphically uglier, and I don't understand why. Like, they're both a remake, but the remake of 2 looks way shittier than the remake of 1. It's really weird. But the Final Fantasy 1 remake, I played through most of it, and I was trying to fill out the whole bestiary, like... capture, or like if you defeat a monster, it shows up in your bestiary, and like there's basically a point of no return at the end of the game. So I was trying to fill it out before the point of no return, ended up losing the game, like lost the cartridge, so never got to finish it. Yeah. A lot of my GBA games were either lost or stolen. Like I lost that one just because like I was out. Honestly, what I think happened, and I apologize to my cousin if this isn't what happened, was that we both had the game, and we were on vacation at my grandma's like place in near the beach, and I had suspected that he lost his and took mine because I don't remember having there was no opportunity I would have had to lose it that I knew of, you know, but somehow mine disappeared and his didn't, and I was like, I was always suspicious, you know, but I didn't say anything. But I could be wrong. Maybe I just lost it.
You should have had a little blue miniature safe with a combination to put them in.
Yeah,
like I was retardedly, autistically protective of electronic devices because I was scared of having to have my parents pay extra money because of guilt. So I would always I kept all the boxes in pristine condition. I have all my games in this little safe. Well, they're out the safe at the moment.
For some unknown reason, one time I had a friend who I'd known in one house, and then I'd moved away. I was like a good hour and a half away, but he invited me to his birthday party. So I drove down. It was the first time I'd seen him in months, and I'd never see him again after this or talk to him again. But my parents took me down to his place, and for whatever reason, I brought my SP and like a handful of GBA games, of which I left behind at least 3: Golden Sun 1 and 2, and Golden Sun 2 and Advance Wars 1 and 2. I left all those at his house on accident.
Just hearing stuff like that makes me die. I just hate it.
It hurts.
The idea of
my SP got stolen later, so you know, big losses all around.
I have another game to talk about. Matt Hoseman's Pro BMX. No, that's not.
Never heard of it.
That's terrible. Forget that. Oh, fucking Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. Red Rescue Team. You played that one?
I have not. I tried to the other day, like on my emulator. I played like a couple minutes of it, and I didn't quite understand it. But I mean, it's a mystery dungeon game, so I understand it basically. But I don't know. It felt weird.
It's
I know people like it a lot.
You know what they're like. It's Pokemon. You are a human turned into a Pokemon, and now you can talk to everyone, and you form a rescue team to go rescue Pokemon that are in the dungeons and stuff. And some of them join your party if they're impressed by you and stuff. But what really got me about this was the fact that these Pokemon had characters and personality and they were recurring characters that came back. They had arcs. And the story was actually heart-wrenching, and there was always this like looming threat of like the human turning back into a human or having the ability to leave them behind. It was like, shit. It's story-wise, it's like ridiculously intense. Yeah. But gameplay is just sort of like beep beep boop boop, turn left.
The most disappointing Game Boy Advance game I ever bought is a game called Bomberman Max 2. because I was a huge fan of the Bomberman games for the N64, which are all like action platformer adventure games, and I never played the old Bomberman games, which are where you just walk around on a grid and drop bombs. And so I bought Bomberman Max 2 expecting it to be like the newer ones, and it was like the older ones, and it sucked shit, and I hated it. So just wanted to bring that up real quick. Here's one I barely remember, and I don't know if you've touched this at all, because you've recently played Kingdom Hearts 1, but Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories for the GBA.
Oh, shit. That was on GBA? I have not played that, no.
It's fucking weird, because it's a game... It's an isometric action RPG with cards. Like, you use cards for something? I don't remember. I remember it had a really weird system, and I don't think I ever owned the game. I think I, like, borrowed it from someone or something like that. But I played half of it and was just like, what in the fuck am I... Like, it was so weird. And, like, most of the game was just going through, like, identical rooms. Like, identical square rooms fighting enemies with your weird card battling. I don't know. I thought it kind of sucked, but I know how Kingdom Hearts fans are.
Fucking Beyblade V Force.
Oh, Lord.
Imagine, if you will, Sonic... What's that 3D Sonic? Like Sonic CD or something?
Yeah.
Where you walk around isometrically. It's basically a game that looks like that, but you're a Beyblade, and you use momentum, and you have a jump button. And it's fucking... It's really cool. But the idea is you're on a very, like, increasingly difficult... Actually, it looks a lot more like, if you've seen the Kirby Golf, what's that called? The Kirby, something
Kirby's
or other.
Dream Course.
Yeah, it looks just like Kirby's Dream Course, except you're a Beyblade, and you're running around trying to find the enemy Beyblade to beat. You've got, like, a spin power that's constantly ticking down, and every time you take a hit, you lose spin power, just like a real Beyblade. This game... It's so weird, but I remember loving it a lot, even though it was so difficult, and I could never beat it. I love Beyblade, though.
We had a Beyblade game on the PS1 that I think we played for all of 5 minutes. Because we found it in, like, a bargain bin in, like, the mid-2000s, and it was just literally Beyblade. Like, you would just let rip a thing, and it would go into a little, like, arena. Like, just like if you were playing the game in real life. But, like, we couldn't understand how the fuck it worked, and it was really dumb and boring, and we gave up immediately.
Yeah.
Fucking Beyblade.
What was weird about that Beyblade game was you had a jump button, and you could move left and right and up and down and stuff. But there were so many, like... It's kind of ridiculous. Imagine... It's kind of... it's like Super Monkey Ball sort of level of, like, tricky platforming the further you go down. Like, tiny little things. Tiny little platforms that are, like 1 pixel long, wide, and you had to go down that. And since it's isometric, you know, everything goes in a diagonal line, but it's not exactly perfect sometimes. So you gotta, like, it's really difficult. That was a good one.
My first Kirby games were on the GBA. Wait, that's not true. Kirby 64 was my first Kirby game, but Kirby's Nightmare in Dreamland. Which is a full remake of the first Kirby game for the NES. I didn't know that till way later, and I've played through the original NES version as well, which is a shockingly beautiful game. Like, it came out right at the end of the NES's life, and it's like the most advanced NES game. But Nightmare in Dreamland is fucking great. You can beat it in one sitting, and it's really fun, and I love it. And then they made Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, which I never played at the time, but I know that's some people's favorite.
What was the name of the GBA game again?
Nightmare in Dreamland and Kirby and the Amazing Mirror.
Okay, I should play those. I wanna play all the Kirby games. So far, I've played Kirby and Smash, and that's it. That's all I know.
The Kirby games, there are a shitload of them, but you can beat any of them in a day. Like, it should never take more than a couple of days unless you're like games like Epic Yarn and Return to Dreamland are longer. They're more like full-length games, but most of them you can beat in like an hour. Like, the first 3 I think you could all beat in an hour, and certainly Nightmare in Dreamland you can.
I could probably try doing like a Kirby month. Like, I play the Kirby one on the first day, make a video about it, like, that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be a fun idea. So all right. Here's the game that brought up the rear end of the console, as it always does. A franchise that always comes out at the very end of a console's life. The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap, which you've actually played.
Oh my god! I didn't have it in front of me. I didn't have that one in front of me, so I forgot that it existed. But I love that. It's my favorite Zelda of all of them.
I think it's the most underrated Zelda, for sure, because I think it's one of the best.
It's the inspiration for the renowned YouTuber Vati Vidya. His name, he comes from Vati, the bad guy in Minish Cap. Well, what do you know?
The thing about, I think Minish Cap came out at kind of like an unfortunate time, because there's a lot of people who love the classic 2D Zelda games. But like at the time it came out, 3D Zelda was where it's at. You know, we've got Ocarina of Time's like the biggest game ever. People, Wind Waker was out and all that shit, and like, I feel like maybe this was seen as weaker than the classic 2D games by the people who liked those, because it's not as dark and like, or as long, because A Link to the Past is a you know, a sizable game. It feels like a very full experience, and it's got like a full story. Minish Cap is a very small affair, more cutesy, more fun, lighthearted.
I've had this thought before, and I think I tried to make a video about it, but I didn't I didn't say it very well. But the idea that I don't like the fact that some really good games are in franchises, because then people just look at them as like the weak one of the franchise, despite it being a really good game. And it pisses me off, because
I even think it's
so
one
good.
of the best in the franchise, because like it's got such an interesting. I guess that's the problem. Like you're saying, is it's not that it's worse than other games in the franchise, but that it's aesthetically different. That people, I think the most celebrated Zelda games, which are A Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, people like them because they feel like an epic adventure. People want to have this gravity to it, like, oh, I fucking saved the world from the evil Ganon. I stopped this time fuckery, you know, like, they want that. The Minish Cap is a comparably, like, you know, lighthearted story, but like it has the coolest idea ever, which is that you shrink down to a tiny boy and explore there's like this whole other society, unbeknownst to humans. There's a smaller society of little people called the Minish, who you can walk amongst, and it makes every level multi-layered and really interesting. And I'm obsessed with small details, and like I love this kind of story. Very similar to the movie The Borrower Arrietty. I fucking love this game. I think the art style, like, I love the bright colors of it. Like, I think it looks way better than A Link to the Past, because it's got this like bright poppy aesthetic that's so common to the GBA.
Yeah, it really feels more like the Wind Waker, but a top-down sort of game with that sort of colorfulness. But people, this is my first Zelda I ever played, and for the longest time was the only one I had ever played. I played Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, I think, a bit. But every time people talk about like Minish Cap, it seems like they only ever mention the small, going small, and they're like, oh yeah, I didn't really like that gimmick. Or they think of it as a gimmick game, even though all of the Zeldas have their own gimmick. Yeah. I don't know. It's just that part of it gets brought up too much, I feel like, in the discussion of Minish Cap. Because I just see it as like it is a big adventure and it's cool and it's got all this stuff, and the gimmick is just like adding to everything. I think people assume the gimmick is like in lieu of an actual adventure. It's like, oh, instead of going on this great big adventure, you can go on a great big adventure in your own house. It's like this little house is now a big place. It's just, I don't know what people think. What do I have to say? It's so good.
Yeah, and then they also remade A Link to the Past on the GBA, which is also good. It's a
I haven't played that one yet.
Slightly aesthetically different because it's a little brighter. And I'm not going to get into this too much, because if you've never heard of it, I had a Gameboy Advance video series that only lasted 2 videos, but I'd love to bring it back, called Handfuls of Zen, where I would take a look at specific GBA games and talk about just like extrapolate all kinds of shit out of them. And in the first one I did on Hamtaro Ham Ham Heartbreak, so I'm not even going to touch on that game. You can just go watch that video about it. I talk about how the GBA has a very specific aesthetic, because the fact that it was not backlit originally, and that just in general it's hard to look at the damn thing, all the games are extremely bright. Like, they would give the games just outright bright colors to make up for the fact that they're hard to see. And so, like, even if you look at a game like A Link to the Past, like, everything is a tone brighter than it was in the original game. And I really love that aesthetic, because I love bright poppy colors. So to me, the GBA, just by chance, has like the coolest aesthetic ever in its games, which is a part of why I like going back to that console so much. And I think it's unfortunate that we don't still have a lot of games doing that aesthetic. Like, the closest I've seen is Owlboy, as like a modern indie game that has like the exact color palette of a GBA game. It's really cool.
Yeah, it was weird though, because like GBA games, they have a lot of bright poppy colors, and even with the SP, you couldn't backlight it perfectly. Not all the color comes through. So when I think of playing Fire Emblem or something, it doesn't feel right to play it on an emulation, because the colors seem too bright. There's like a little bit of washed outness.
That's kind of what I like about it, though. I like playing it on an emulator because it's so insanely bright, and it cracks me up, and I love it. You know,
it makes you laugh every time.
Yeah. Here's another game that was really big at the time: Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. Did you ever play that?
I think I played the one with the babies. I think that was the next one.
Oh yeah. Well, that's like on the DS, I think.
Yeah.
There was a few. Superstar Saga, though, is kind of the proper sequel to, or spiritual sequel to, Super Mario RPG. And it's like a really goofy, funny comedy RPG game with cool mechanics. I never got very far in it. I think I probably got a good 5-6 hours in. I thought it was cool, though, and we have some friends who are huge into this game, so we would be totally remiss if we didn't bring it up. Devu and Munchie are both very big Superstar Saga guys. But yeah, I'm guessing, you said you didn't play much of it. We didn't really talk much about Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. Oh wait, I meant Ruby and Sapphire.
Yeah. I mean, both those sets of games, they're like the same gen. I think I almost think of them.
Forgot about it. I accidentally clicked on it instead of the other one, and I had forgotten about it. But yeah, Ruby and Sapphire came out at a time where my interest in Pokemon had largely waned, and I played through the first couple of gyms and just didn't get into the game. So I've still never played that far. Even Omega Ruby, which I own, I still have not played past the first gym.
I mean, I beat Sapphire like 20 times. I think on this cartridge in my hand, I have beaten the Elite Four with my guys over 100 times, just because that's the best way to get XP.
Yeah.
Because there's not really any good place to grind that isn't like boring and stuff. But where was I going with that? It was something to do with something. What did you say?
Good game. Good game? Is that what you're getting at? Good game? You ever play Emerald?
Yes, it was a good game. But you said something specific, and I was going to respond
that
to
I
it.
had never really played past like the third gym.
Oh, yeah. Omega. I got Omega Sapphire, and for some reason, I just didn't give a shit. Even though Sapphire was like the game I'd played a lot and loved to death, I was just like, I don't want to do this again. On my real game, I'd beat this all my Pokemon are level 100. I don't need it. I don't want to do it again. What are you, crazy? Why did I buy this?
The remake felt weird to me because of the fact that it's like they're using the updated graphical style, but it is literally the same game as like the old ones. I mean, there's tweaks to the mechanics and stuff, but like for me, it was this weird feeling of like I wanted the next step in the 3D Pokemon games, not to just like port it weirdly onto a game that wasn't like this before. You know, it feels a little weird to me. Like the game world was not built for 3D graphics, so they don't quite work.
I think I got quite far in it. I don't think I got like really close to the end, but there was this point where they changed up the story just a little bit, took you to this new island for like one battle, and like it was a story battle. But then Steven or whatever his name is, the guy, he gives you, he just gives you Latias, I think. Like one of the super rare
legendaries.
The thing. All right, here's the thing about Pokemon Sapphire. They've got the Cyclops Golem sort of rare legendaries, and then they got the water and ground ones, and then they have Latias and Latios, the flying Pokemon. These guys are so difficult to catch, and it takes all of your hunting skills to track them down and catch them, because they are like Abra. They will run away immediately. You need a Pokemon with a specific ability to stop them running away, and you need to train it up. But then, what you need to do is you need to check. Once you've seen it for the first time, you'll be able to see where it is on your map. And every time you fly anywhere, or like teleport anywhere, you just go instantly from one place to another, its location will randomly change to somewhere that isn't that. So, in order to find these guys,
that's how
you have to walk there.
The 3 dogs from Gold and Silver were the same way.
Yeah, it's so difficult to do, and I don't think I ever managed to do it because I couldn't get a Pokemon with the right ability to stop it from running away to a high enough level, and I just sort of gave up trying.
And now they just give you one.
And now they just gave it to me, and I was like, that, fuck off. I don't want this. It's like those things where like, oh yeah, you got a promotional. If you enter this code or do this thing, you can get a super legendary shiny version. And I don't want. I didn't get this. I didn't own it. I'm just gonna keep it in a bank and say, well, I have it in my Pokedex. Cool. I should just release it. I hate stuff like that. Even though I get it every time. Every time there's a free legendary Pokemon for me to get by for a gift or whatever, I get it. But I don't want it. Fuck.
Those games aside, Fire Red and Leaf Green, I never played them at the time because I just saw it as like, well, I already have Red and Blue, so I don't need it again. But now I'm really glad they exist, because I've gone back and like, this is the only time where I think the remake is just an out-and-out improvement, and there's no reason to go back to the original. Because like,
well, I mean, aside from Metroid.
Yeah, that too. I meant in the Pokemon series.
Oh, yeah.
Because like I definitely would probably play Heart Gold and Soul Silver over the originals. I'm not sure about Omega Ruby versus original Ruby. I haven't gotten far enough in either one to say, but the graphical style is so different that it's really easy for me to imagine liking the other one more. You know, like it would really come down to like which game do you like more, and they also change so much about the game. Whereas with Fire Red and Leaf Green, it's just like, here's the same game except it's better. You know, like the graphics are, because the graphics look like shit in the original Pokemon games. The Pokemon look terrible. So like, I would probably never return to the originals.
I really wonder if they will ever re-release Fire Red and Leaf Green in 3D, whether they'd actually go the double dip with a franchise, with like the first game in the series. Yeah. Do you think they'd ever do that?
What did you say? I wasn't paying attention.
Do you think they'd ever like re-release Fire Red and Leaf Green in 3D?
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised. You know, they're doing like they're doing the Sun and Moon sequel games, but instead of doing just one, they both have one. Like it's Super Sun and Super Moon. So
well, didn't they do that with Black, White, and Black 2? Black 2 and
yes,
White 2?
They did. Now that you mention it. I don't know if this will be like that.
Like the idea of a sequel.
Black and White 2 were a full-on sequel, though. Like Emerald was just Ruby and Sapphire again, but with extra shit. Black and White 2 were like a whole new game. I don't know if that's what the new Sun and Moon are going to be. If that's the case, then it's more justified, I guess.
I was assuming, that's what it was, but I didn't really look at the trailer that much. I just caught the glimpse of it.
Yeah,
I don't want to buy another Pokemon game. I think Pokemon Moon is just like, yep, that's enough. It's definitely enough.
If they fixed the problems I had with it, that'd be nice. All right, we're running way long on this. Are there any specific games you wanted to talk about? Because I've got a bunch I can just rapid fire through that I don't think you've played. But if you have any other GBA games you wanted to talk about specifically,
well, there's Yoshi's Island, which is another SNES game. Oh my god, I forgot about Shrek 2, the movie, the game. I fucking love this shit. Yeah, you don't understand. I mean, it's terrible, but like, you control Shrek and Donkey and Puss, and you press R or L to switch between them, and every time you do, they say their little catchphrase, and every time you go back to Shrek, he says, okay, and it's so funny to me, and I would just switch back to Shrek over and over. I don't think I ever finished that game. It was too hard, and I fucking love that.
Alright, well, I'm gonna start rapid-firing through games. Tell me if you've played any of these. Astro Boy Omega Factor.
Oh my god, I love that game.
Fucking great side-scrolling beat-em-up game by Treasure. I've only played a bit of it on an emulator, but I thought it was fucking awesome.
Play the whole... I mean, this is kind of a huge thing, because, like, this is the big, mind-blowing... the ending is not really the ending. You have to play the game twice. It's got a huge, big, deep stuff about it. Yeah. I don't really want to get into I want to make a video on this.
I kind of want to play it after I read more Tezuka stuff, because it's got like all the major Tezuka characters in it and shit. Yeah. And it's
got blackjack and all that.
Yeah, it's cool. Here's a game that's not good. I played very briefly on that one Let's Play, which was Banjo Pilot, which is like a shitty version of the flying segments from Diddy Kong Racing. Drill Dozer, which I've still never played and I've always wanted to, so we'll return to that at a later date, I guess. Klonoa, Empire of Dreams, I played through most of that recently. Thought it was the Mega Man Battle Network series. There were like 12 of these on the GBA or something. I never played any of them. Mega Man Battle Network, you know about it? The weird
I didn't
RPG
know there was 12
Mega Man.
of them.
There's a fuckload of them. There's like a lot of games in the series. I don't know if there's actually 12, but hold on, let me look. I want to know how many there are. There is... It looks like there's 6. There's 6, and I think they're all on the GBA. Yeah, they're all on the GBA. So the 6 games. That's a lot. I know Monkey's a big fan, but I never really played him. A game we unfortunately neither of us have played. You should do a GRPJ on this. I should play it. Mother 3.
Of course.
Widely considered one of the best RPGs of all time.
That's on GBA? That's cool.
Yeah, it's a GBA game, and it's got a really weird aesthetic. Like it's interesting looking. A game that I liked a decent amount, Pocky and Rocky with Becky, which is a sequel to Pocky and Rocky for the Super Nintendo that you may remember from early Game Grumps playing it.
Yeah. And Becky? Who the hell's Becky?
Becky's just another character. It's Pocky and Rocky, and also Becky is there.
I'm just imagining like a Valley Girl for some reason, just jumping in there.
I did a Let's Play of this game on my channel. Like, it was just me playing by myself, and it was like an hour, and I beat the whole game. It's pretty good. Riviera: The Promised Land. This is a really fascinating RPG on the GBA that doesn't play like any other game I've played. You explore via like you'll get to a map, and basically your characters are in the center of a screen, and you'll press like up, down, left, or right, and they just go to another screen. Like, the exploration is just going back and forth through screens, and then like it's got like turn-based battles, but they're totally different from any other kind, where like, and you're basically just like, you have a certain amount of weapons in your inventory that each have a certain number of uses, almost like Fire Emblem, and you have to base your combat on that, and then the plot plays like a visual novel, almost like a dating sim game or something. It's fucking weird. I played like half of it a few years back. I'm fascinated with it, but I never beat it. Robotech: The Macross Saga, which I also played in that Let's Play video with all the GBA games. One of my favorite side-scrolling shooters, mostly because it's based in the Macross franchise, which is great. Sword of Mana, which I also did a handfuls of Zen about, which is not that good. Tales of Phantasia, which is a remake of the first Tales of game for the Super Nintendo on the GBA. I played like half of it as a kid and got sick of it, and I highly doubt I'd have any more patience for it now. One of the best GBA games, Wario Land 4. Have you ever played that?
No, but I saw you play it.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Really excellent, short action platformer. I would recommend to everybody, because it's probably only 2 or 3 hours long, and it's really fucking fun. It's really satisfying. Yggdra Union, which is from the same people who made Riviera, and this one's like a really bafflingly complex tactics game on the GBA that I tried to play and literally didn't understand enough to play. Like, I was just so confused that I just gave up immediately. Yeah, it seems interesting. There's a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh games for the GBA. I don't think I had any of them.
I've got one, the Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship 2004, which is, it's weird, this, I don't know why, maybe it's just my copy, but there is no way to save the game unless you turn off the console, or you turn the Game Boy off while you're in a match. If you turn the Game Boy off while you're in the menu, nothing gets saved. I don't know what's up with that, but that was like the only time I really actually played the game Yu-Gi-Oh! Even though I have cards. Yeah. I just never actually done it properly.
That's funny. The last one I have to talk about is Summon Knight Swordcraft Story, which there were 2 games of. I've only played the first one, and I don't think I beat it, but I did a review of it on Adventure Action RPG. It was text only. I never made a video out of it, but it's a pretty solid action RPG dungeon crawler game where you're in like this small town, and every day in the story you'll like go into the dungeon and make a certain amount of progress, and the fights are like it's like a normal RPG where you like get into fights like in a separate screen, but the actual fights are a side-scrolling beat 'em up, a lot like the Tales of series. But it's pretty fun and cute, and I like it. But it got a bit repetitive, and I think I gave up before it was over. But I want to play the sequel, because there were 2, and it looks adorable. And that's it. That's all the GBA games I have to comment on. So
I've got a couple quickfire ones. Treasure Planet sucks. Lord of the Rings, The Third Age, pretty good, actually. Like a turn-based, grid-based game where you go around playing... every like major battle of Lord of the Rings.
Whoa.
You can play as like the good guys or the bad guys. You can be the orcs with all the special Uruk-hai and Saruman and stuff. You got the important units. Dope. It is really good. You should emulate the shit out. Lord of the Rings: The Third Age.
Give that a shot. I've never even heard of a Lord of the Rings tactics game. I'm really shocked.
Yeah. Dragon Ball Z: Legacy of Goku 2. This is like it's weird,
right? Isn't it similar to the Omega Factor?
It's not side-scrolling, but it is. I guess it feels kind of similar. It's very heavily story-based, obviously based on like the actual manga and stuff. But I think I played this before I had played or read Dragon Ball Z, so it was cool, and it's got like bit crushed versions of all the cool soundtracks from the anime.
I've heard a lot of praise for that game. It's like one of the better Dragon Ball games.
Spyro Season of Ice fucking sucks. Mario Party Advance, strange Mario Party game. It's not about playing a board against computers and winning at the end. It is about going around a town, which is a board game, and getting mini games and gadgets and just it's like a game you can complete. It's like a linear game, and once you've beaten it, you have all the gadgets and mini games, and you can just look at them and play them again.
That's kind of cool.
It's a very weird departure from Mario Party. Try it.
Sounds better than Mario Party. By the way, that Spyro game. That Spyro game's the isometric one, right?
I think there might have been a couple of them, but yeah.
That's the only Spyro game I've ever actually played.
It's terrible.
I know.
I hate it so much.
I hated it.
You can't see fucking anything, you go too fast, and then there's like the Sparks missions where you're just Sparks and it's like a shooter, but it's too difficult, and I don't remember why
I played it. I don't know if Shade had it or something, like, because I definitely don't have it, but I do remember playing it. Anything else?
I have Ghostbuster. This one is in like its own separate little mini case, and I don't know why, because it's not good and I hate it. I can't read it. Okay, fuck it. It's a Ghostbuster side scroller where you shoot ghosts with lasers that are very annoying sounding. That was like one of the first games I got with Pokemon Sapphire, and I didn't play that much. Crash Bandicoot Entranced, side scrolling Crash Bandicoot game, which has terrible cutscenes but isn't actually that bad of a platformer. It's just sort of like pixelized, low-resolution versions of the PlayStation models. Mario Kart Super Circuit is the last one I have. that's an okay Mario Kart, but it's not as good as really any of them.
I never wanted the handheld Mario Karts because I was like, to me, the point of it is a couch co-op game, like, or a couch competitive game, like to play with my friends. And why would I want a lower graphical version of it? You know.
I do really like the Bowser's Castle from Mario Kart GBA Super Circuit, just because of the aesthetic of it being like in a sea of lava. And then the metal grates and stuff. I mean, it's been redone in like every Mario Kart since.
Right.
It's a really cool one, I think.
Well, all right. We've rambled for an hour and a half about the GBA. I kind of hope this will be the longest Game Boys, because I feel like this is the console we both care about the most. It had to get out everything. But join us next week. What console are we going to talk about next week?
Well, it's a Nintendo console this time. Shall we do... Have we done PlayStation? We haven't done PlayStation 1, have we?
Nope. You want to do PS1?
Alright, that's a good one.
That'll be interesting, because that's one of the ones I've only played in retrospect. Never had it at the time. So, yeah. See you then, everybody.